Today on Independent Wrestling Profiles, we're talking with the Rainbowbrite Wrestler Laurel CassieD. Like any good story, we want to start in the first chapter, and that would be when you first discovered wrestling in any sense, like as a fan or otherwise.
So I first discovered wrestling. I don't even know how. I just watched it at a very young age. My whole family did. So I got brought up with wrestling. Monday nights would be family night wrestling. I mean, it goes back to, I have a picture with me as, I think, a 3-year-old, my grandfather and my cousin. And in his living room, you could see like the ring ropes. So we were watching some kind of wrestling. So since an early age, always been a fan.
When you start that early and you're doing it with your family, it's almost hard to tell, but was there a point where you kind of almost saw like the switch happen where you went from like, oh, we're doing this together to just like, no, I'm invested and now I'm dedicated and I want to watch it every week?
There's multiple switches. My dad, he unfortunately got sick, so he had to go get his kidney flushed out. And that's when I kind of fell out of watching wrestling because he wasn't there to watch it. My mom really wasn't interested. And then I picked it back up. That was high school. I picked it back up when I went to college. I stayed on campus and I got a little homesick and I was flipping through the channels and wrestling came on. I'm like, oh, I haven't watched this in forever. Let's watch some wrestling. And that's when I got invested myself into wrestling.
Was there any particular aspect or performer at that time that kind of really helped move that along, or was it just the general pageantry of the show?
I always loved the general pageantry of wrestling, but being in my early 20s and, liking boys and all that, I really thought Randy Orton was pretty hot. So that did help me get back into it. But it was more the pageantry too. So mix of both.
For everybody, it's a little bit different. You're in a situation where maybe it's cool to like wrestling. It's not cool to like wrestling. Did you have any sort of group of friends or other family members or like anybody that you could share this with? Or was it more just like a private viewing experience for the majority of the times?
There is my sister and my cousin who both really like wrestling. They would come over my dorm room sometimes and we would watch it when they were in the area. But it was more of a myself experience and actually found a lot of projects I focused wrestling around recently. So it was more of a me thing.
Okay, so like a guilty pleasure. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yep.
Did you at that time have an opportunity to experience it live at all? Did you get to go to maybe a traveling house show, a big event? Watching it on TV is one thing, but feeling the crowd is another. Did you get an opportunity to kind of feel that other side of it?
So I always kind of here and there went to house shows and like the big WWE events that would roll in. But I found out about the indies. It would be afterwards, like I was still in college. It was my second or third year. I came home to visit. And a friend of mine was like, hey, you want to go to a wrestling show? It's like a local wrestling show. And I'm like, what? They have this? Of course I do. So me and my friend went. And then I was just like, oh, my God, I could do this. Like, just here. Like, that's possible. Like, I never knew exactly the system of how to be a wrestler. I just thought, oh, mommy, I'm going to be a wrestler one day. And that was it. But then the indies, I was like, this is a gateway. So while I was studying in college, I was also looking up places to train.
Was there anything that kind of struck you immediately about the like feeling of being there? Maybe the accessibility of the performers, the feeling of the crowd or was it just more like, hey, there's a proximity that works out here for me?
It was the proximity for sure. The performers, the crowd too, was really good. I can't remember exactly how good, but I just remembered being really into everything. How many people would come to watch, how many great wrestlers there were, and like, oh, there's leading this secret life. There were like a normal person during the week, and the weekend they would wrestle. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So it was all a bit of both.
So you came home from that show and you're starting to look up, where you can train for this, where you can find it. When does that actually happen? When does the trigger get pulled and you actually reach out to somebody or set foot into a training scenario? Like, how did you actually make that switch?
So I was actually still at college. I was busing to and from college from my house. I looked up just on the internet wrestling schools around me. I found there's Square Circle, which I kind of wish I went to. There's one in St. Catharines and another one somewhere in the Grimsby area. So I called up St. Catharines and they're like, yeah, come down. You can like watch the first, like you can watch some training to see what you think about it. And then if you want to get into it, you could definitely sign up. My father brought me down to the facility and I'm watching them bump. I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, that sounds nasty. Both my dad and the trainer there was like, oh, it's not as bad as it looks. Like, you'll have fun. Just try it out. So I'm like, all right, I'll give it a try. I've been wanting to do this since I was a kid. So I signed up with them. It would be CWF that they're known for today. And I started. During that time, I was still going to school. So I would bus to Oakville, bus to St. Catharines, and then bus home to Hamilton.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, I don't know how I did it because I could barely get up as it is today.
Now that you've started training and you're getting in there, and I'm assuming trying to balance life with all of that travel and college and any sort of social experiences that you have, like responsibilities, whatever. But what are you finding as you're training that is maybe coming a little bit more easy for you? Is there anything that you're kind of struggling with that, not that you can't get it, but you might need to work a little bit harder to overcome? Like, what are you actually experiencing when you're doing the training?
I was experiencing, like, I was getting some of the stuff, like the rolls, the simper things. Even to today, I find doing the more athletic stuff difficult for myself because I'm not naturally athletic.
Okay.
So I still have a hard time even getting some of that stuff today. It's been so long, and to be honest,
Hmm.
I didn't. It was a great starter school, and
Okay.
that's really it.
If it was a starter school, like where did you go next? Like how long were you there? Did you transition to another training facility or did you just kind of stick with it until you started competing?
I was having trouble getting some stuff down. So they had me being a manager and then I transitioned to reffing in hopes that I would get like psychology down. I had no psychology,
Okay.
absolutely no psychology at that time. And then I was with them for 2 years and I heard Santino was opening a school
Okay.
and I was really interested in that. Beforehand, Ethan Page opened up a school in Hamilton, which I really missed out on, and I kind of kicked myself for it. So I decided, okay, well, I think I'm done learning what I can here. It's been 2 years, and they're just kind of having me ref more than anything.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to Battle Arts. So I went to Battle Arts, stayed there for about a year, and then I moved on to another school. I That's what I do. I move on to schools. I like traveling. One person told me wrestling is like school. You don't have the same professor for everything. You have different professors for different things. That's what I kind of did after Battle Arts. I was 2 years there. I was finding it difficult to be like the ring general because I was the one with the most experience out of the girls that were there currently. And I
Hmm.
think I was really kicking myself because I didn't even know how to put a match together.
Okay.
So I took 2 years off and then I went to Rip Impact School here in Hamilton. And that's
Okay.
where I really found that that's where I started flourishing and getting the idea of psychology, my move set. I don't really think I had a move set back then.
Well, if you're primarily refereeing and managing,
Yeah,
you didn't need a move set.
yeah, exactly.
At this point, you're at your third school now, and you mentioned that you did some refereeing, you did some managing. Did you have an opportunity at any of these other schools to like actually get in and have a match? Or was it pretty much limited to these other roles and you were still looking to get actually in the ring as a competitor?
So I was trying to get elsewhere wrestling. I did have like here and there I was booked as a wrestler, but a lot of people were interested in booking me as a ref. There's no female refs at the time. I was a female, I was a ref, so they're like, oh, that would be cool. And I kind of just kept accepting those bookings in hopes that it would help me or get me to wrestle, which I didn't find it did.
No, yeah, but you got to try and make connections and get your name out there as much as possible.
Exactly.
Do you recall any sort of match where kind of like that change happened where, okay, now I'm in the ring, now I'm having what I guess might be considered my first match or my first like official match, and I'm not looking back from here?
I don't know if I would think of it that way, honestly. I was just happy and excited to be in the ring wrestling. I was just hoping that it could continue like that. I was just trying to have fun and I was enjoying it.
Okay. But do you remember your first match? Do you remember who it was against, where it was, how it went? Any of your
Yes.
feelings that you had before you actually went out there?
So it was my first match. I'm pretty sure it was against Sabrina Kyle. It was for a charity show. And it was really weird because I came out to manage Moondog Buddy for his match. I don't know whose his match was. And then it kind of transitioned into where a match for myself where Vanessa came out and challenged me. And it was more like it was a squash match. It would probably be not even, probably 2 minute match, not much. I remember being really like scared and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for this. And then after I wasn't happy with myself because when I went to go bump and feed, I'd stand there like a deer. And then she had to be like, come on, come on. And I ran, took move, and then I got up and stopped. And I'm like, I've done this in training. I know how to bump and feed, but why didn't I do it there? So I remember being really like angry at myself for that and just I'm really tough on myself.
Was that maybe a case of like a little bit of stage fright, nervousness? Were you just kind of getting in your own head because you had been waiting for this for so long, and maybe you were just more concerned with like, how's this going to go rather than just letting it happen naturally?
Definitely. I always think like, I never let things happen naturally. Like I always have to be in some kind of control of them. Unfortunately, I need to know what's happening. Definitely got in my head for sure. It was more of a shock that I was going out there because it was just last minute like, hey, Sandra, you want to go out there? And I'm like, yeah, of course, like I want a match. Of course, I want something in the ring, right? So it was all mixed of all that.
When did this take place?
It was I remember the promotion. It was Moonshine Brand, Matthew Terry's show there. And it would have happened maybe 2012, a year after I started.
And how long was it after that before you were getting a little bit more regular bookings as like a performer?
After that, I got another match with Caitlin Diamond. It was a squash match. Those were my two first matches. And then that's when they decided to put me more on being a manager, doing reffing. So I started wrestling and then I kind of got put to those two positions for a while and wrestled here and there for other promotions.
Do you remember like when you actually started getting regular bookings where it was kind of like a more regular thing?
So it would have been when I started at Rips that I got more regular bookings.
And was that just because the opportunities were available to you, or do you just think at that point you had kind of built up enough experience, built up enough confidence that you were able to reach out a little bit better? Like how did that actually happen?
So I think it was because I've been around, people know me, I built up confidence. So I made some of those connections. I was getting better. I had a moveset. I could put stuff together. And people saw that I was doing the work, putting it in. And I think that's what kind of helped me.
During that time you're performing, do you have any sort of like highlights or favorite matches that took place that you kind of cherish and carry with you even to this day?
I had a really fun match recently with Leah Sparks. I'm really proud of myself for that one and proud of her as well. We kind of came at it from a different angle than like my character. We were both like very like fun, bubbly characters. And right when the bell rang, we just like started pummeling each other. And I just loved how like everyone just loved it. And I'm just loved how it was getting over great with everybody, and even Leah's like, "Oh, I had some doubt with that, but that was great." And I'm like, "Yay!"
Almost like a full submersion of expectation. Like everybody was like, you're just two happy-go-lucky people, everything's positive, and then just the gloves dropped.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
That's awesome.
There was another one like when I first got my first title, my crossbody pro wrestling tag team title with Nilo. That was a long time coming. That was very special.
Do you recall like the feelings that it like you had just hoisting the gold for the first time? Like, is it almost like a validation? Is it almost like, is it something you can even put into words? Do you recall what it was like?
It was like validation. I was like, finally, I've gotten something. Like I've always been really self-conscious that like no one's ever put a belt on me for as long as I've been in. I was like, oh, is there something wrong with me? But like that kind of gave me more validation. Like, oh yeah, I did it. Even though this is my first one, like it felt good. I know when Ben came to me and told me about what was happening, I didn't believe it at all. Because, like, wrestling, you're just like, oh, yeah, I'll see it when I believe it. So I was a little bit like, this really happened. And I was surprised, too. So it's nice.
How long did it take to sink in?
Probably like a couple of days.
The belt was still there and it hadn't gone away. Let's talk character work for a second. So obviously you
Yeah.
have that happy-go-lucky character that we had referenced. A lot of color,
Yes,
lot of presentation, like we had discussed.
a lot.
Is that something that you had always wanted? Like, I know that these things change and they don't always end up the way that we had intended. But when you first got into wrestling, did you have an idea that this is the character that you ultimately wanted to become, or was it just something that happened through just happenstance over like an evolution?
So I had no freaking clue what I wanted to be, like character wise. I went through everything. I did the Harley Quinn phase that every girl does, generic, just woman wrestler. I used to go by the name Cassie Cool. So I was trying to get a character that would be kind of like cool looking, but not at the same time if she was a heel. I didn't come up with the Rainbowbrite Wrestler Laurel CassieD until I would say right before the pandemic happened, right before. So it was during 2020. I was starting to come up with the idea, and it came about by me talking to my partner, and I was like, I just want to wrestle. I just want to have like a fun time. I want to be like Rainbow Bright. And I'm like, I think I got something here. I think I got something here. So I kind of built off of that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to dress myself in all these different colors. And I do love all the different colors of the rainbow. I'm very artsy. I went to school for art, so.
I think that's actually beautiful advice, because sometimes people just need to realize that the simplest way is to just embrace who you are. And then
Yeah,
everything else can kind of fall into place when you're not so worried about like forcing the pieces to fit together.
yeah.
You had said that this kind of came together just before the pandemic. And obviously, the pandemic was a big factor. A lot of indie wrestlers, maybe they're just starting out, getting momentum, maybe they're actually established. But how do you keep like wrestling relevant, and how do you keep your training going, and how do you keep evolving this character when the world shuts down and you essentially have to hit pause for a couple of years, really?
So it was really difficult. Fortunately, I was more focusing on personality of my character and like what I would like to show in wrestling. So it was just more coming up with like how bubbly she would be or catchphrase. What would she wear? What would she do? During my workouts, I would work out with my partner and we'd fool around and say I give him a chop. And then I gave him no chop. I'm like, oh, I could do this. I could do patty cake chops. I gotta write that down. So it was more of just like just creativity just coming to me and storing it for when we did start up again. Which I think it was I started training private lessons in the summer with Rip and started putting these ideas together and kind of generating what to do in the ring with Laurel.
One thing that I absolutely got to ask about, because we've already kind of semi-referenced it already, is that tandem that you have with the Kawaii Kids. You've two-time crossbody tag team champions. Just kind of in your words, how did that team come together? How did that kind of evolve into what it is today?
That came together through Ben Ortman's. He saw, I was starting to go to his school for a bit, train there, and he's like, oh, it would be great if you two were in a tag. Because I would say Nilo's character is the same as me, but like we're kind of intertwined. It makes for an interesting dynamic, and it does. He was right. It is. And it was just more like let's try this out. Let's see where this goes. Let's have fun with it. And that's what we did through season 1 of Crossbody Uproar. And I had actually season 1 was my favorite. I had so much fun. Yeah, this chair's from season 1. I brought so many little things into season 1, and it's really fun. I had a lot of fun.
Can you tell us about that chair? It's a very bright, colorful chair,
Yes.
not what we're quite used to seeing as wrestling fans.
Exactly. It's the Laurel CassieD chair. It is a chair that I got at Walmart for a toddler and decided that it'd be cool if I painted it rainbows and put my stickers on it. And then basically I got the chair because for one of the uproars, I couldn't make it because of another booking. So we're like, okay, let's see. And I was in a feud with Crystal Moon. So Ben had this idea. It's like, okay, she'll put you out on the shelf for the next show. That's how we can explain your absence. And I'm like, okay, cool. And he mentioned something with the chair. So I was like, I'm going to go get a chair. I'm going to make it Laurelified. That's how it came up. And I brought it. And he's like, oh my God, that's awesome, that chair. We used it in the match. She basically curb stomped me. We used it a few other times. Nilo was getting beaten up by Crystal Moon and Shiloh, and I came out swinging with the chair. I got thrown in my face in another match. So, yeah, that's basically how the chair came about.
So let's talk goals. Maybe short term, maybe long term, but is there somewhere where you would like to see your career go next? Whether that's a company that you have yet to work for, a city you have yet to travel to, an opponent that you have yet to square off with? Like, is there anything that you want to cross off the wrestling bucket list?
Okay, well, this is a great question because I've been struggling with the goal part for a little bit. I did come to a realization, like, my goal in wrestling, I want to have fun. I want to travel, like wrestle wherever I can, either here, the States, even if it's in overseas. I just want wrestle, have fun. And the ultimate goal would be to wrestle in Japan.
Okay.
But currently I'm not really doing anything to reach that goal. So it's more of a dream.
There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you just got to put yourself up there so that the opportunities can present themselves. And you said dream. So obviously I have to ask the tried and true cliche question. What would the dream match be? You don't have to worry about being confined by reality. Just stick to active performers so that we don't open the vault to all of the historic ones. But dream match, don't have to justify it. Who would you absolutely love to get in the ring with?
Oh, there's too many people. Oh, man. Well, okay, so local, like indie scene, I would really want to face Jody Threat. Yeah, I love Jody. She's taught me a bit too.
Almost one of the foundation of female performers in Ontario. Like she's absolutely an inspiration.
Oh, she is. Like, I can't believe she's gone so far so fast. It's awesome. I'm so happy for her. Dream match, I keep on thinking it would be a really fun match if this were to ever go down. Me versus Eddie Kingston.
Okay.
I would love to have a match. Just it would be really fun, the dynamic between us. He's a inspiration to me as well. He kind of helps me kind of keep going in wrestling when I don't want to stick around. That'd be a fun mystery wrestling show.
He really is just phenomenal on the mic. I think like everybody can look up to what he can do when he is cutting promos outside of as
Oh
well
yeah.
the in-ring performance. So we got the dream match out of the way. Let's step outside of the ring, okay? You have some free
Okay.
time to yourself. You can dedicate as much time as you want to wrestling, but eventually you're going to have some spare time.
Yes.
What do you like to do to pass the time?
I love to play video games. I'm more of a role play, adventure shooter type of gamer. I recently took up sewing lessons,
Okay.
but that partly has to do with wrestling because I would like to make my own gear.
Okay.
To hang out with my friends, my loved ones. I have 2 cats, and it's like if I'm not wrestling, working, or doing stuff around the house to make it look presentable, it's like, what do I do other than playing video games?
So when I spoke to Nilo, obviously he mentioned video games, and I had to ask him for his top 3. And I find that that question seems to stump everybody that I ask, and I want to do that to you too. So, what are your top 3 video games?
I would have to say the video games that I always come back to, which is one is Don't Starve. It's a survival game. Very cute graphics. It's very gothic looking. I either love gothic looking stuff or very cute stuff. I'm like one or the other.
Don't Starve has that beautiful cell shaded graphics style, and they also did that update for the Don't Starve Together, so you can even play a co-op. It's absolutely fantastic recommendation. What else we got?
I've been playing recently Cult of the Lamb.
Okay.
Kind of similar idea. What got me into shooters would be Borderlands. So that's a favorite of mine. I've learned to really appreciate shooters and now can't stop playing shooter games.
That's awesome. Just getting back into kind of the wrestling side of it. This is always a tough question, but if you could go back and give a young version of yourself who was just starting out a piece of advice that could also maybe translate to somebody else who's watching, who's aspiring to be a performer themselves, what would you say?
I would say don't try to be such a perfectionist, especially like since you're coming right out of the gate. You don't need to be perfect. It's okay to wrestle on shows and mess up because you'll still get booked just as long as you show that you're putting in the effort and training, which I know you are doing. Be a little bit more assertive. Say what you want to be, what you want to do. Don't just accept a job just because it gets you. It gets you a step closer to wrestling, but not necessarily would it at the same time. You want to be a wrestler, so you came into this business to be a wrestler. So to be taken seriously as a wrestler, yeah, just be more assertive and straight with what you want.
That's amazing.
Do that, yeah.
I mean, I like it. It ties into what you said earlier as well about just like being yourself. Like, just embrace who you are and don't let,
Yeah.
like, shape what's around you. Don't let what's around you shape you.
Yes.
I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and do this with me.
Oh, no problem.
Could I just ask you to please repeat for everybody once again who you are and maybe where they can find you online if they want to follow what you're doing next?
Okay, sure, yeah. Hi, I'm Laurel CassieD. You could find me. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, occasionally Twitch at hi_I'm Laurel.
Thank you for tuning in to Independent Wrestling Profiles. Please help out the show if you can with a like, subscription, or review. We'll see you next time.